Welcome to the Genius Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Sarah McBride, and in today's conversation, I'm speaking to Rachael Te Wano. Rachael, in her words, is a woman diviner that helps you connect to self, connect to earth, and doing that through your own energy. I've known Rachael for a number of years, and the reason I was drawn to her in the first place is because her work is about helping you reclaim your sovereignty. So you'll know by now I speak a lot about self-empowerment and only working with those that will empower you and bring you back to self. And Rachael epitomizes these qualities. So she is an oracle. She works with sacred sound. She works with Akashic healing, galactic entity removal, lineage trauma clearing, and anything that holds you back at root, which can help you reveal your soul gifts and your destiny path. She holds impeccable space to help you shift into new states of awareness and create a sense of freedom, and ultimately so you can embody a transformation. And that's what her work is about, the embodiment. She runs a mystery school, which she founded, a DNA key practitioner training, which is a pioneering code for a new world. And she ultimately guides you into remembering your own strength and wisdom. So let the magic begin. Hi, we've got Rachael Te Wano. A lovely name, as I've just been saying, and what you were telling me what it means. So I'm going to tell everyone for the purpose of this. It means I am, which is amazing and perfectly sums you up as well in the work that you do. So I've known Rachael for maybe 4 years, about 4 years, and had some amazing womb sessions. Rachael is known as a woman diviner. So I'd like you to describe to the listeners what that means, Rachael.
Firstly, thank you for having me. Really beautiful to have this conversation. I know it's going to go wherever it needs to when we come together. What is a woman diviner? Well, when I felt it and that landed in my awareness, I too asked the same thing. It's not something that you hear. The woman diviner is what I now know, what I now feel. It's an expression. It's a state of being, and it's fully understanding connection to ourselves, body, human, and connection to earth, to our environment. So the micro and the macro, but fully understanding that we are the divination. Our bodies are the tools, and our environment really is that honey, that beauty, that divination.
Love that. And as you know, I love your work, and we've done some amazing work together. And I love that. It sums you up. It does sum you up and who you are and what you do. And today, why I brought you on and why I was excited to get you on is because for me, the conversations that we've had, the work we've done together, and just, the many conversations and where they've went in specific realms, should we say. And we've discussed a lot in the past about the Akashic records, and I've seen a rise in healers, therapists, people talking about the Akash. I've even seen comments about or heard comments, you can go to the Akash if you're good. And if you do this specific work, you can get to the Akash. And totally not my understanding, and I also know it's not your understanding. And you, as someone that I know to be an expert, because it's not about the training, and it never was for us. It was about the initiations and the energetics that we work with and understanding things on a deeper level. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to come in and we can have this discussion. And, just for the listeners to even give them clarity on what it means, what it is, why you would go there, and things being done right.
Yeah, well, the Akash is such a potent pathway of healing. For me, it's almost like we have access to the timelines, to the book of life of the soul, all that the soul has ever been. And it's going through time, the spiral, to the root of the trauma or the block or the karmic contract. And when we're operating at the root, we can then heal and weave it forward and no longer be bound by the magnitude of what was. So yes, the challenges may still rise in our life, but we're not carrying the 5, 10, 20 incarnations where we tried to heal that karmic contract, that binding of our soul. So for me, the deep respect I have for this passage of healing, it's up there. I think it's a really potent space to have access to, and it needs to be respected and honored, because when we're in the Akash, if we don't abide by universal law, of course, things can happen in that experience that we need to know about. It's not just sort of enter the Akash. We have to have reverence what we're actually opening. I know I do when I work with any client. There's a process and there's a passage that my soul actually remembered. So I kind of do things backwards. There's a real innocence to my work in that I began to work with people and just these knowings would rise within me, where to access it in the body temple, where to access it in the energetic field. And because I'm an oracle, it was almost like I was just being shown videos. And then I innocently pieced it all together from remembrance and devotion. And then there was one moment where the magnitude of, wow, this is the Akash. And then I sort of went off and I was like, what is the Akash? Because Rachael, human self, didn't even really have an understanding of what that was. I would just almost see this book and then all the pages had the videos like the onion and we peel it back. So they're the metaphors that were shown to me as I went into that journey. It is my belief we all have the Akash within us because it's our DNA, it's our soul, it's our ancient past. So yeah, that's the Akash for me and how it shows up for me in one-to-one sessions. Within the Akash, it's not only us, it's also our lineage. So the ancient past of our bloodline and our soul lineage. So it's this big, potent, beautiful space that's within us that we can get to the root of our deep.
And that's the thing, what you're saying, because that's my experience. It's within us, and it's something that you go within to experience rather than without. And sometimes, I believe in guides because I want to say guides on a physical level. We all share knowledge with each other and give each other guidance, and we all have different experiences. And like yourself, I'm a seer, so it's different. I think when you see things and yet you piece it together and you don't get the full script straight away, you've got to make okay, this means this, and sometimes it can take years before you get the full picture. But although I do believe in that, I also feel like sometimes when training comes into play, sometimes it's almost like a regurgitation of information without the embodiment and the embodied experience and the initiation. So who's to say you have access? Who's to say this person has access in this moment through this particular training, as opposed to it coming into the reality at the time when it does? And I think for me, that's a little bit of it as well. You know, when you've got a guide, it's okay, this is, you can feel this is time, or you feel it's time. But if it's someone that actively seeks and potentially goes into it with the wrong kind of mindset, as you say, there's not that deep reverence for it and the respect, then things can shift, courses can shift, and things can happen. And what's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think I feel, and I've witnessed, I guess that is kind of in all things consciousness, isn't it? When it's, I always teach to lead from that internal innocence. I say innocence, other people may say mastery, but the word innocence for me is always sort of led. But I think, seeking or doing a course, yes, if that's your desire, but always allow for that internal rhythm of you and space and time. I don't think this is an ancient passage, I believe, of remembrance. And within that, you know, through those incarnations of refining and bringing it all together in remembrance, I think that layering on top of, it's almost like layering your wisdom with knowledge, and they're two very different things. But I think that's what will set people apart from other people. It's really the merging of both for that unique way to be expressed. But I agree. I've heard some beautiful stories of the occasion. I've heard some really disrespectful stories, but within all things, there is duality and polarity, and that is the human experience. And I think it's always just coming into heart space and really feeling your integrity into, am I ready to step into this? Do I have this sacred reverence? How am I going to work with this? So for me, in the beginning, before the walk of the wounded healer back in November 2020 really came, that thread released in the collective field, I full ownership. I used to journey into the Akashic and work with that person in that life, in that trauma. So I was working with them in that timeline. After that shift in our collective field, now I operate in a new way where it's a co-creation with, like, you as a person now and the life that you were bound in it, or sign that contract, or whatever language you use around it. So it's almost like a 3-part. And I think that there's potency in that, because we're working with so much embodiment now. It's such a key piece. And when you take the client on that journey, it's their experience. It's no longer, we're not the healer anymore. They have the experience, and we're like opening up this space for them because we have access, and because that is a soul gift of us. We open that space and create the safety within universal law for them to have that experience. And I think it's more visceral and it's more powerful because all of them is having the experience, past and present.
That's
so even within the Akashic, it's quite beautiful to be a part of.
And you described it as well really beautifully, because you know, you probably, like yourself, we've seen it all, like in terms of, you know, ways of going there, training, what it looks like, you know, people delving in and what the experience is, but it's, like what you've just said, it's their experience. And I was speaking about this on the last podcast about, the age of the guru is done, it's over. And, you can be a guide, you can be a facilitator to hold the safety of the space. But ultimately, it's the person having their experience in that space and how we can hold the space when they're in there. So on that, what is your experience of maybe people who haven't got that experience to, be a space holder in that way, and they're taking others into the Akash and navigating through the Akash, and maybe it's not with integrity, or maybe they feel that it's with integrity because they feel they can hold space. But as we know, it's different levels when you're working with different energetics. So what's your experience of what happens, the consequences of that?
I feel within any space like the Akash, when you are working with the timelines of the soul, I think there's no more important time than to be in your heart and to be really landed on that soul connection. Because what happens when we don't lead with heart, when we're leading with ego, for example, or we're going in and opening spaces that the processes aren't there to support, we're almost opening up threads within their soul. And we are bound by universal law. And do you know, if you asked me to list the universal law, I couldn't speak it. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I know it within me. Like there's this, it's almost like, when you're clairvoyant and you sense something or you see something, you don't always have to say it. You bring it through the heart, and that is your divine filter of speak that or move over to there. Just because we see it or we can doesn't mean that we always should, unless it's for the highest good of the person that we're in service to. And so when we are working in the Akasha, if we're not operating out of that highest timeline, that highest respect for their soul, karmic contracts can be created in that space. Universal law is broken. There's a ripple effect to that misuse, to that disrespect of that space. It is not for me to judge, and it's not for me to say you're doing it right and you're doing it wrong. That's not my way. But I do, if people ask, I always say it's a space of deep reverence and respect, because when you're in there, you're working with past lives, and that affects the becoming.
And I understand what you're saying about it's not a judgment and saying, however, there's also responsibility if you do have more knowledge and more wisdom in areas that, we share that, so then people can make an informed choice. They can use discernment, whether they choose to or not, because no one is saying to somebody else, you can't do this and you can't do that. But if people don't really understand, and then you do have somebody else saying, actually, I can take it in here, I can do this, we can do that, we can alter the future, we can alter the current timeline, if people are sharing that, and they probably haven't got the knowledge themselves, which is why they're sharing in that way, then sometimes it's okay. This is how it really is. Make your informed choice and decision from that space.
And I feel these conversations are really important, because I feel, especially when we begin the path, everything is sparkly, everything is shiny. And unless we really lean into conversations like this and speak from all the different facets of energetics and Akash and soul healing and womb wisdom, people need to really be mindful and conscious. Like, do I align to that? Like, is that my truth? Or am I just being swept up in this new shiny thing of, oh my God, this is amazing. Well, of course I can do it. And we, in a world of instant gratification, you can learn anything. We're bombarded with information all of the time. And there's this, there is this thread of now instant, and of course I can do it. I love that in certain aspects, but in these ancient places, and we need to have these conversations about it, just to up the level of reverence and know that there is there's an ebb and flow. Yeah, so if we're doing it in sacredness, there can be what's the word? I've lost the word. Consequences, I think.
Yeah.
It sounded so hard, but yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask you a bit of a personal question.
Sure.
So, with your own work, for you, the work that you've done in the Akashic, is there anything that you would like to share in terms of how it shifted or changed your life in some way?
I feel the level of service that I can offer my clients because of that deep knowing of the Akashic. It really becomes this fast track of transformation because we're no longer operating just in here, just in this incarnation, in this. We're not putting a Band-Aid on. We're going to like the core of it. And we're working there. So yeah, it was a game changer for myself in this life to remember what was and to come back into that space. But yeah, to see and to witness the transformation in my clients because of the Akashic work, I mean, that fulfills me like nothing else. It's my honey. It's yeah.
And how is it? So now you're saying you do it in 3 parts. But how, if someone wanted to work with you and visit the Akashic that way, what's something typical that you do or something that you work on in the Akashic with people?
Sure. So whenever I receive a client, I'm a light language speaker. So for me, I begin with a light language blessing. It's very quick and I work at this quantum speed. So the Akashic will just be a snippet of our session together. So in this blessing, I'm really asking and through light language, bowing in reverence to the soul and asking, how is it I can serve you? And then it is through that highest aspect, that soul aspect, that really leads me in session. So that's who I'm working with, because the human soul knows that quickest pathway to the soul's highest path, to the big why, to that destined path. So in that sort of reverence, we're really setting that tone, creating that space of sacredness. And then if the higher self shows me or directs me into, it's a direction from the higher self. So then I respond to that and I will check the Akashic. So I see the Akashic sort of open within the solar plexus, the I am, the gateway to the light that we hold. So it's actually through there that I connect into, and it's almost like this spiral. If I could show you the visual, it's almost like this spiral, and then I arrive into this connection with this person and I know that it is a past life, and then that soul is almost like a representative. So imagine incarnating 20 times to heal the bounding of suppression, within the throat. So before, we would have had to do sort of a regression that would take hours and hours. or heal each contract individually. That shifted too because of our collective shift in consciousness. So now I call forth one representative and I'm working there. The client in the moment is having this experience, is like feeling it or seeing it, whatever their passage is to have that experience. And we can kind of talk. Sometimes they have their eyes open. A lot of my clients are very multidimensional, so we can be fully here, present, communing, but also speaking about what we're seeing and experiencing in the Akash. And that can take 1 minute, it can take 5 minutes, but it's not a long, drawn out process. And most of the times, 80% of the time, when that thread is healed and when those lives finish that process that I take them on, there's almost like this new space within the body. And that's when I get so inspired by this work, because you see it in their eyes. You see the, whoo, like the little, ha. And that's when you know, like, it's fully grounded. It's fully in this now moment. And that's the crucial part. And I always say in all of my work, we can do these amazing, etheric, deep healing journeys. But if it's not landing, if we're not rooting it into our humanness, into this now moment, it won't translate in that future self.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's the Earth Star is the key.
I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, and even the integration, the helping something to just integrate into your beingness, into your body and everything. And that's a piece I feel, and it's really important part of my work, where, people want the multi-dimensional outer body, the light show, and, take me here, take me there, and the energetics. And it's like, okay, you can do that, but it's like, to me, it's just like an ayahuasca trip. We go on a big journey and we see things and we have realizations and we go multi-dimensional. But then what are you doing with it when it wears off? How is that going to be integrated into your life going forward? What does that look like? Because the journey itself doesn't mean anything. It's how do you take forth the lesson? Because we're being shown. And, it's the same for any healing work. And I know in the past, a lot past, I used to be more about that, not just for me, but with my clients. I want to get this and show them this and show them that. And then now it's more like, okay, well, we can do all of that, but let's do the basics and integrate all of those lessons, integrate everything, so you can take your life going forward with the integration of what you've learned. Otherwise, it's almost a disconnect, what you say, between the knowledge. It's not wisdom, it's knowledge. Well, I've got that, I've seen it, I've done it. But actually, it's not wisdom. It's not an embodiment. It's not in your code and your DNA. You're not walking around with that in your energetics because you just know it. And I think that's, for me, what I find more than, current, more than ever, that people want the light show, they want the experience, but they're less concerned with the embodiment and integration of what they've just witnessed. So it's amazing the way that you're doing to bring that in.
Yeah, and you too, we know it's the key, I think, because when you see the transformation in your life, when you live and breathe it and become it, and so, of course, then you want to translate that, because that's the key. That's where people get to live the ritual, is when that, really becoming that experience.
Yeah. You are the walking experience, and it's
you are the divination.
And you don't have to think about anything. There's no, because you are it. So when you speak of it, it's you are it. There's no let me learn my lines, let me have my notes, because you are that thing. So you just teach them whatever's inside. There's something you touched on, which I'm going to just touch on now because you mentioned it. And I know because I've experienced it from you when you said about light language. I'd like to touch on that because my experience of light language, obviously, I don't do light language, by the way, but I've had a session off you where you've incorporated light language and it's felt really harmonizing. It's felt I had tinnitus, and you remember in my ear, and we're bringing it through the spiral, and and it was harmonized, and I felt balanced. I felt good. I felt calm. I understand. I felt every cell, every molecule. And I've experienced someone, and it was only on social media, I think it was Instagram, and somebody had shared this guy, and he was saying, I am doing light language, and I can't remember. I think he said he did DMT or something, and he did and he downloaded this light language. I felt physically sick, and I've just seen your reaction, so I know you could feel it too.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see. I actually vomited that night. Now, there was no reason for me to vomit, like from a food point of view. I was thinking, have I got food poisoning or this or that? Next day, I was completely fine. But when I was watching it, my stomach, I had a real visceral reaction to the point I was physically sick that evening. And I know, and I always said that was from whatever he was doing, and that did not feel good. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't believe that he knew what he was doing wasn't good. But this is another thing as well that's out there with light language, because I had that real, lived experience to know, okay. And now it's to a point I can't watch people doing light language on social media, just random people. Even if it's not, not necessarily something bad, but it's almost like a lot of people don't know what they're playing with as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that you felt that viscerally, whether it's a perceived, leaning in and a homecoming, or it's like, no, that is the potency of ourselves. That is the potency of our body and our barometer of discernment. And for me, as someone who organically, again, did not learn light language, it just began, I would hear it like in my energy field. And then I didn't, like, as I'm not galactic, like I don't watch sci-fi and all the things. I was like, what is this? But I knew there was a resonance. I knew the sound. And then it became, and for me, light language is removing all of the masks and allowing that ego to dissolve. And it's this beautiful commune of souls. And so for me, it's a key, and it allows me to quickly do the work. So it's dissolving the ego, it's dissolving all the barriers. So we're not having to talk and go through all those layers. The light language just opens up that soul to soul connection. And whether, that is a heart-based feeling or not, it's a revealing. Light language is a revealing.
I mean, I have had an experience in 2016, it'd be in Bali. I went to Bali with a mentor of mine at the time, and he took me on this path. I'm gonna have to get him onto the podcast. He's an amazing person, been on the path a long time, and he took me on this journey around Bali, and we went to this lady, and she was doing singing bowls, crystal singing bowls. I had this spontaneous reaction afterwards. And I started speaking what we would know as Aramaic, which I hadn't learned it. And I mean, he said that was his toughest retreat with me on it. He said, I felt like afterwards, I felt like just closing my business down and opening up a Turkish kebab shop. You know, yeah. He said,
center point, energetic center point.
He said, you with your energy in Bali at the same time. He said that was like on another level. And I said, for you, I actually thought I was dying. I remember, like, you know, thinking really cocky. I've been on the path for a long time. I've done this and that, and the things that were happening to me. And, you know, that was one of the experiences, like the spontaneous. First, it was sound, it was noise, and then it was just speaking. And and afterwards, it was almost like I was in a bit of a trance afterwards. I was like, what's just happened? And then I was sitting sheepish, and you know, you've got to go in the car back to the retreat, and there's all people in the car, and the women were like looking at me, thinking, wow, what was going on? And I was like, don't know.
Do you now, in reflection, feel that was an aspect of you remembering your?
I'm 100%. 100%. There was even the interaction that I had with the lady that was doing the singing. Well, she was in her 70s, and she was, you know, I think she'd walked a path as being a nun, then something else, and then she was on this path. And even my interaction with her and the way she was speaking to me about this lifetime that from past, and this activation and me releasing trauma for the lineage. And we just knew, we were just in sync, and we just knew, and we were clearing it through sound, through, you know, all these different things. And then the spontaneous speaking. And I thought, okay, that's definitely a life or many lives. There's aspects of me being realized in this space, in this time, and I'm meant to be here now for this.
And I love so deeply that travel and weaving with that, with, you know, what is a stranger on the street, our souls remember them. And as we join, and that's why I think it's so important to sit in circles and to travel and to weave, because you just don't know when you're going to connect with that activation, that soul remembrance, and what that, you know, the soil on sacred soils are like keys for our DNA, and they activate remembrance. And I feel that part of life is about picking up those seeds, and so we can remember our wholeness. And through sacred sound, we're stepping away from that human mind. Sound is a bridge, and it operates from a different space to mind and logic and talking, and it's something else. And I really feel like we're remembering what we once knew when it came to sound and language of the soul.
Absolutely. And it's been my astrologer told me in it was December last year, you're going to do a lot more retreat and travel. And I was like, at the time, no, I'm doing some retreats at my home for one-to-one clients only. And then it turns out I've traveled like to, I think, 6 different countries up to now this year. And I'm like, okay, and I've still got retreats to host and things happen. And I know it's probably been my busiest, it has, not probably, it's been my busiest year of travel to date. And every time I've visited specific lands, and depends on who I'm with as well, the almost like the activation of something, and then I'm being called to something else and somewhere else and knowing. And I know that's been a big part of your work as well, about walking specific lands. And I'm still going to walk the lands, Egypt, with you one day, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, in innocence, I look back, I traveled, I got on a plane when I was 19 with no money, but I just knew. And I literally just without having language around spirituality, without having anyone to talk to, I traveled for 10 years, and now I kind of look back and just think, wow, those places and what I experienced in the remembering and flashing of past lives, and picking up those seeds, experiencing those remembrances and the energetics of different land masses and meeting different people. I don't think I would be who I am now without that experience, because it is so activating. The soil holds so much for us. The earth holds so much for us.
Absolutely. What have you got coming up this year in terms of your...
Well, I'm coming back to the Heartlands, Glastonbury, in September. And I'm also at the end of September. I haven't really announced this, actually. I don't know why. I'm only taking 4 people on this space. It's a mound, a sacred mound that I've remembered from 13,000 years ago, where I worked those lands. The mound is actually my exact Venus chart in this life. So It's almost, profound. And I went there last year, and so now I'm going to open up this space. It's a primordial mother connection point, very much linked to Egypt. It's an initiation walk.
What country is that?
In Wales.
Okay.
Anglesey. Yeah, the world's best kept secret. So a lot of my earth walking is intuitively, I say I walk the Sophionic grid lines, so the original grid lines of the Sophia, of the divine feminine. So I can go to a space like Stonehenge and everyone is sort of there in awe of that, and you'll find me over in the corner kind of working this potent space and reading the land and working with the earth serpents and the custodians. So I do walk the earth quite differently, and I share that, and I want to evoke that in others. Like, where does this land want you to walk? Like, really intuitive sort of earth walking. So England and Wales. I'm going to be doing work in the US in 2024, the Earth Walker and Woman Diviner. I think connection to self and connection to earth is crucial for where we're going as a species, and these really basic, simple embodiment tools can expand us but deepen us. Just honoring that calling. Dubai, the limitless template of Dubai. I know you do work too. I think we need to do something there
together. Definitely.
And all through Australia. So I'm a gypsy, and I feel really grateful that my service takes me all over.
And you do it with a family. You've proven you can have it all.
Yeah, you can.
Because that's another myth about women and the divine feminine, that we have to be in this box and this is what we do, when actually we can have it all, and you're a walking embodiment of that.
Thank you. Do you know, I'm going to be really transparent here. Like, I said it the other day, and I was talking with a friend. She's like, so when's your next big trip? And through COVID, we really, we set up our own school. We lived in this beautiful bubble on acreage and grew all our own food. But my children, they can come with me. My husband has a job, he can travel, and my service can support all of that. But at the moment, my children just want to be normal. They're like, no, Mum, you go and do that. We'll meet you in. And so this real acceptance and freedom that my soul calling doesn't necessarily need to include them. We don't need to go and live there, but we've raised really resilient children so that, they'll come sometimes, but they're happy for me to go and follow that calling and sit in my service, because they're doing exactly what their free will is desiring to. We get to weave our soul gifts and our big visions with our friends and family. We get to make it look like how we want it to look like. not how we're told it should be.
Exactly. And that's, that was my exact point about you can have it all. You can have the family, you can do your travel, you can do your work, you can have a husband, you can have children, and it all just weaves. Whatever that looks like, it looks like.
Yeah. And when you step into your service, it becomes big. Like, I would never imagine I got to live this life. Sure, I'm intentional and I'm conscious, but it just went there, so quickly. But that is devotion. That is like honoring that call when you feel the sensation, like I need to go to Glastonbury or I need to go here, honoring that. When the logical mind says, don't be silly, you can't do that. Like honoring that, standing in, and then sitting in the magic of that devotion.
Sounds amazing. Well, thank you, Rachael. We've covered quite a few topics today, and I know we'll do more in the future as well, because there's just so much knowledge and wisdom that comes from you as well. So thank you for sharing.
It's been an absolute joy. I feel honoured and privileged to have you in my life. I love our conversations, and that ripple gets bigger, doesn't it, when we join?
Absolutely. Yeah. How can people find you? What's the easiest way to find you if they wanted to make contact with you? I will put in the show notes, but just...
Yeah, so Instagram, I'm happy for like a respectful DM. I love personal interaction. I also, through my website, we can book a chat and have a chat. There's got to be a resonance. I feel like we walk together. Social media, rachaeltewano.im, and my website, rachaeltewano.com. Have a feel. I always say, jump in and feel your way forward, because that speaks louder.
Absolutely. I'll put the links as well in the notes. But thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Such a joy. Thank you, my love.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Genius Alchemist podcast. If this episode has ignited your curiosity or inspired you in some way, then I encourage you to subscribe and share with friends. For those that want to stay in the loop and be the first to know about future episodes, special offers and free resources, make sure to check out the link in the show notes. By joining my mailing list or reaching out through that link, you'll have exclusive access to all the latest updates and ways that you can connect with me. I look forward to sharing more inspiring stories with you all in future episodes.